Good afternoon and welcome to the Monday, June 1st, 2009 meeting of the Glendale Water and Power Commission. Sheila, may we have roll call?
Commissioner Chan. Present. Commissioner Ibrahimian.
Present.
Commissioner Miller.
Present.
Commissioner Foley.
Present. I'm going to make a motion to move the consideration and approval of the minutes until the next meeting when Secretary Yao is also present for the approval or consideration. I have a second?
Second.
Anybody, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
I'm also going to elect to move the oral communications portion of today's meeting up to the next item, and I believe we have a card from Mr. Milano to speak during oral communications.
Thank you, Chairman Foley, members of the Commission, and City staff. My name is Herbert Milano. I've come here today to make several requests, and hopefully these requests can help us increase the level of participation from the general public. First of all, I want to make a suggestion that as you take a look at your the type of reports that come to you as part of the strategic plan, that one of them be somehow the level of participation from the public. I think that the number of people that come to see you is an indicator of how well we have communicated the need to encourage the public participation, and that perhaps within your minutes that it be reported how many persons from the general public have come to the meetings. I wish all the commissions were doing that, because that would allow us to have a little bit of transparency with regard to how effective our outreach are to the general public, and or how effective are the communications with regard to the scheduling of these meetings. I want to address a suggestion that the Commission address at every meeting key performance indicators on the strategic plan, and that the KPIs on impacts to the public be addressed first. The KPIs have all kinds of reports with regard to internal objectives, but I think that for the general public, the objectives for them should come out first and be highlighted. I would also like to suggest that we be given reports with regard to the average monthly usage, with regard to water and electricity, with regard to in terms that we can understand. At least I like to see it in gallons as opposed to the per 100 square feet. Yeah.
Cubic feet.
100 cubic feet. Yeah. So 100 cubic feet, yeah, not square feet. Thank you. And also I think that we should also be tracking to see how much of the kilowatt usage is per dwelling, as a way of getting a handle on as to whether or not we're really conserving energy. Second thing is another point is that I wanted to see what policies or objectives we are going to address, or you're going to address, with regard to the report that was given to the City Council by the Glendale Water and Power back on November 12th of last year, in which it states that 20,000 families are in need of the public benefit assistance. And I think that should be brought up on a continual basis so that we know what we should be doing to help out these families in these very hard economic times. I think that there's a significant number of people who are in need of a break, and perhaps tying that in with regard to the number of requests for some type of postponement or a break on the utility bill. That we find out, it's another request, that we find out what the 10 lowest rates charged to unified school districts are within California. I want to know if any other public utilities are having a special charge to their school districts. Because if we are, if we're charging, let's say, 16 cents or a commercial rate to the school district, whether or not that is a fair charge to charge another public entity that is also in dire financial straits. Fortunately, the Glendale Unified School District will not be canceling summer classes and will not be laying off teachers. But I think that if we continue with very high rates for them, or better yet, that if we're able to give them a break, that perhaps we can encourage assistance to classes and teachers for kids at risk. And here's a personal challenge, if I may put one. I believe that the water crisis was officially stated back in July of 2007. And I always had in mind to ask the City Council to disclose their own water usage. Because if you are promoting that the public in general conserve water, what better way than to actually show it, after the fact to see how well they've done so. So my suggestion is that you yourselves disclose your own water usage for the last 2 years. And the second is that you show a 20-year trend on the transfers to the general fund, and on the same chart to actually show the CIP request in millions of dollars, so that we can see the last 20 years what the CIP requests were and what the actual transfers were to the general fund. That's it. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak early.
Any comments, responses? Sheila, do we have any other oral communications requests? To the next item on the agenda.
Reports information, 3A electric, item number 1, electric 5-year plan by Eric Olson.
Good afternoon, President Foley and members of the Commission. My name is Eric Olson. I'm an electrical engineer, too, in the substation engineering and planning group sections in electric. This presentation you should have already received, and this will just be, not the presentation, but the actual 5-year plan you should have received already, and this will just be an overview of that. The electric 5-year capital improvement plan provides a blueprint for accomplishing the goals of this GWP strategic plan. The electrical services CIP outlines the priorities and the direction of projects. This presentation will provide a summary of the current electric assets, the strategic plan initiatives supported through the CIP, the benefits and accomplishments of improvements over the last 5 years, and a summary of projects and initiatives outlined for the next 5 years, as well as specific projects for the 2009-2010 fiscal year. The electrical network serves the city of Glendale with a service area of approximately 33 square miles and 84,000 installed meters. This service is accomplished through the installed infrastructure and assets as follows: 560 miles of transmission and distribution cable that's spread out between 69, 34, 12, and 4 kV. These cables, along with the 2 switching stations and 12 distribution stations and 112 feeders, form the backbone and arteries of the electric network. The electric network infrastructure also includes over 9,000 transformers, over 14,000 poles, 2,000 vaults, and 32 square miles of fiber optics for communication and data transmission. The strategic plan initiatives are directly supported by CIP projects, including upgrading 34 kV transmission lines to 69 kV by 2014, converting 4 kV distribution to 12 kV by 2020, replacement of electromechanical and solid-state relays with intelligent electronic devices by 2020, and reducing the number of outages to less than 25 per year on average, and the average duration of minor outages to less than 10 minutes and major outages under 20 minutes, and implementation of an effective asset management program by 2013, and a reduction of system losses from around 15% to under 10% by 2014. Since 2005, GWP has completed several CIP projects that are already aligned with the GWP strategic plan. 3 major transmission line projects were completed, including 69 kV reconstruction of the Montrose-Bel Air line, installation of a new Kellogg Rossmoyne number 3 line, and rebuilding of the Rossmoyne-Montrose lines. The Kellogg substation was replaced with a state-of-the-art 69 kV gas-insulated substation, and several substation transformers were placed into service at Tropico, Western, Glendale, Switchrack, and Fremont substations. 46 feeders were reconstructed to 12 kV. Fuse coordination and replacement has been completed on 4 feeders. Transmission loading issues were mitigated, and 4 new feeders were placed into service. Under protection, breaker failure and new reliability schemes were implemented across all 69 kV transmission lines. 6 feeders have new protective relays installed, and new standards for protection and reliability have been developed. The direct result of these capital improvements is an improvement in system reliability. The frequency of outages has improved from less than 3 outages per customer annually from 2005 to 2008 to less than 1 outage per customer in 2009. The system average interruption duration that averaged 181 minutes has been reduced to just over 36 minutes in 2009, and service availability has increased from 99.97% to 4 sigma, which is 99.99%. From 2005 to 2008, Glendale averaged 91 outages per year. In 2009, that was reduced to 58. Our goals are to reduce the outage duration to under 20 minutes and reduce the total number of outages to less than 25 per year.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
How was it determined 25? I mean, what did you use as that number as your goal for 2014?
I believe we looked at a combination of outages we believed were preventable and outages that we could take from being a feeder outage to being a more localized customer, just single customer related outages.
All right. So does that include the balloons and the squirrels? I mean, those are things that you're probably never going to stop 100%.
No.
Okay. So you couldn't have a goal of number of outages per year at 0?
No.
Okay. Thanks.
The 5-year plan outlines major improvement projects, including 2 substation reconstruction projects and 12 kV conversion work in the Glorieta and Grandview areas, conversion of 4 feeders a year to 12 kV, fuse and relay coordination projects on 4 feeders per year, vault replacements at 2 per year, and additional feeder extension projects as needed. New technologies will be implemented to provide increased information to GWP and customers through projects such as the Sonic Communication System, SCADA system, advanced metering infrastructure, or smart grid, as well as information management systems for outage tracking, geographic information systems, and asset management. GWP will be providing continuing support to regulatory programs such as NERC, WEC, and GO 165 inspections. In addition, GWP will become registered with the American Public Power Association as a reliable public power provider by 2010. The components of the RP3 registration include reliability measurements, safety and training programs, and capital improvements. Under our Green Streetlight program, we are in various stages of implementing LED street lighting. We currently have 3 LED test lights installed from different vendors to verify and quantify the energy savings as well as the functionality. In addition, we will be starting a demonstration project in cooperation with SCAPA to install 100 LED lights. The cost of these LED lights have a value of around $250,000, but will be provided at no charge by a vendor. We estimate that if LED lights were implemented over the installed base of about 9,000 streetlights, we'll save about 60% in energy savings annually, or about $500,000. In addition, we would expect to save an additional $520,000 annually over the life of the bulbs due to the fact that the LEDs last about 15 years instead of 2 years for the currently installed bulbs. The plan includes conversion of all 69 kV lines to conversion of all 34 kV lines to 69 kV by 2014. All relays changed out from electromechanical to intelligent electronic devices by 2018. Installation of disturbance monitors throughout the system, and for our transformer load management system, annual upgrades. This system basically helps to tell if transformers need to be replacing before they fail. Our goals for 2009-2010 fiscal year include registration as the Reliable Public Power Provider, RP3, starting the replacement of the Glorieta substation, installing a service transformer to provide backup power to our UOC facilities and the Calax switch rack control room. And in order to prevent outages due to aging equipment, we will be replacing 3 substation breakers and 2 vaults, and we will also be refusing and coordinating protection of 4 feeders. We will be improving our transmission and distribution projects by replacing the Glendale-Howard transmission line, and implementing distribution improvements on Brand Boulevard and Acacia Avenue, beginning the smart grid with implementation of advanced metering infrastructure, complete our SCADA data acquisition system, and complete the LED pilot program. And that's it for the overview. If you guys have any questions, we'd be happy to take them at this time.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. I noticed it was focused on power distribution. I presume that the power supply is part of a separate capital program. Oh, okay. All right, because there's several critical goals related to that as well. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Olson? Thank you.
Thank you.
I do want to commend you for the excellent work you're doing in getting the system updated and trying to achieve these ambitious goals. Thank you.
Very much.
We have a request to speak on item 3A from Mr. Kazazian.
Good afternoon. My name is Aram Kazazian. I don't know if I have the exact agenda matter to talk to, but I will tell you. We will be conducting a test to reduce the power consumption to some of the homeowners. I would like to see us to save some money for a lot of the homeowners right now that cannot afford to pay the bill. I think Mr. Steiger and I, we're going to be have a system, want to run a test and see we can reduce the homeowners on their bills. And hopefully we can arrange that. We had arranged for tomorrow, but somehow there's a conflict, apparently misunderstanding. The time-wise, we have some testing equipment coming. We'll try to set it up. What it does is called a K-bar system, where you put a relays on the system. We have a company coming from Florida to test the system tomorrow. And we're going to run our own test tomorrow, unfortunately, because they're here already. We have equipment already delivered. We're going to run the test, and then we'll arrange another one. If you could, by chance, do it tomorrow, it would be great, because all the equipment is here already, and the testing equipment has arrived, and everything's ready. If we can arrange it, it will be great, so we don't have to do it a second time. We want to see how much power we can save by they're claiming about 30% power we can save on air conditioning units, any motors, swimming pool motors, commercial, industrial, any three-phase systems. We have all the testing equipment arrived already, so we'll run the test, and hopefully I'll bring our results back and see how much we can save. If we can save that, you don't have to upgrade some of the generators. Maybe the city can save some money that way too. But if you can arrange it tomorrow by any chance, it will be great, because everything is here. We're meeting them tomorrow at 12 o'clock anyway. We're going to run our own private test. It looks like we have a couple more coming in. That will be great to see what's going on. Thank you.
Another item, a request to speak from Mr. Milano on item 3A.
Thank you, Chairman Foley. Members of the Commission, my name is Herbert Milano. If we're going to encourage the general public to participate more in these meetings and to become aware of the objectives from the strategic plan, I'd like to suggest that perhaps a summary that is a little bit more understandable, by the layperson with regard to the objectives might be useful. This way, if more people come in to listen to your sessions, this becomes a lot more understandable. When I was listening into the strategic objectives, I see this mixture of specific objectives with regard to active purchases or improvements of certain types of equipment. And I was going to suggest that if perhaps an explanation be made along the lines of, it is our objective to improve the reliability of the system, because we have the following areas where the problems generally arise from: aging equipment, aging transmission, aging transformers. And our objective for each one is as follows: for A, for B, for C. I think that something like that could be more easily understood by the general public and by the layperson who may not be so familiar with the specific types of equipment that is being presented to you. My rule of thumb, I guess, is that if it's if it's ambiguous and puzzling to me as to what a particular item is, it probably is to the general public. And at least it keeps you focused on the main target with regard to, in the next 2 years, we'll reduce or improve our reliability to having only, let's say, 24 outages. And they are generally caused by this, this, and this. And our objectives are, for each one is this, this, and this, and they'll be measured every so often. And I think that kind of expression of a strategic plan is the way we communicate it, since, in my understanding of a strategic plan, one of the key objectives is to convey and communicate effectively to your customers. And as a customer of GWP, I would love to see that communicated to me in a way that is clearly understood by me. To say, yes, we want to improve our reliability by 50%, and it be improved in the following areas, and this is where our capital improvement is going in those areas. And I don't need to know specifically, the type of transformer or the type of line that is being, because it's irrelevant to the general public. Internally, I'm sure that your staff already knows exactly what they are, and perhaps you yourselves already understand what that is. But I was wondering if that information and that specific type of equipment nomenclature really gives communication to the public. And so my suggestion is that the communication be made in such a way that the layperson would be clearly understand where we are, where we are going, the steps that you're taking to achieve that, and how often it's going to be measured. Thank you very much.
Just in brief response to that, I think Mr. Olson today did a great job in presenting what he had to present. There's also the strategic plan, which has a brochure that's 5 or 6 pages that was handed out to the public. It's available at these meetings. It's actually, I think, in the back table at this particular meeting here today. And it's on the GWP's website. So I think GWP does do a great job, and they should be commended for trying to make it as user-friendly as possible for the general public and their customers. And I personally would like to just commend them for a great job. And Mr. Olson today in his presentation did that, just summed it up. These documents are often technical and pages or inches thick, and they have to go through them and narrow down what they can. So that's all I have to say on the issue, but thank you. Anybody else?
Thank you.
I do want to say that I think when we discuss the work that's going on, it's unavoidable. We're going to get into technical detail, and as soon as that happens, some portion of the audience is going to be lost. I don't know how much. We might possibly be able to provide more along the lines of what you're talking about, Mr. Milano, by showing how particular goals tie into particular values. And of course, all these goals have been set up with respect to particular values, and we might, when we do these presentations, put in something to help remind the audience what particular values we're championing. I think a lot of what we heard today was in the area of power reliability, which is a crucial area and one in which we can see a lot of improvement has occurred over the past 5 or 6 years. So anyway, thank you for the remark.
Next item.
Item 3B, Customer Services Report Number 1, Stimulus Package Update by Craig Keenan.
Commissioner, my name is Craig Keenan. I'm the PBC Marketing Manager. I'm here to give you a quick report on where we're at with the stimulus package. As you may be aware, the federal government is giving money to the cities to do energy efficiency and conservation block grants. We're proposing to expand or add additional programs to our PBC portfolio with that money. Glendale is slated to receive about $1.88 million in EECBG funds, the Energy Efficiency Block Grant funds. We're going to combine that with $1.58 million of PBC money, and we'll be offering 8 new or expanded programs with that. The first program we're looking at is I should add, we put these programs together in cooperation with the other city departments. We've had a number of meetings on this with Public Works, and we've talked to planning. The main one is the city building retrofit project. It's about $1.8 million project to redo lighting and in 23 city buildings. The biggest project will be refurbishing the old police building, which is going to be I think it's called the Community Services Building now, It's to update the chiller and the boiler and various variable speed drives and things like that in that building. The second program we're looking at is the vending miser program. Basically, we have vending machines all throughout the city, and they use a lot of energy because they're running all the time, even when people aren't using them. These vending miser devices will shut the compressor down when there aren't people around buying things. So it keeps the sodas in that cool enough. They're about the same temperature, marginally higher, but you can't really notice it. But it saves a tremendous amount of energy. And we have a number of these vending machines throughout the city and city property, so by adding these devices, we'll save money for the city on that way. Another program we're looking at is the Energy Efficiency Audit and Retrofit Program. We have that program right now for our largest businesses. We're going to expand that program by $200,000 a year for 2 years to offer energy audits and things like and retrofits for our large business customers. Another program we're looking at is the Positive Energy Home Energy Reports. This is a really neat program that would target our 25,000 largest users, residential users, for these reports. They would come out 6 times a year. They use a number of different databases and demographic data to personalize the energy message to them. It'll compare them to like-size houses and with families and show how much they're using compared to that specific demographic that they're in. Hopefully we can expand this to use for water, because you would have a 2-page document that would go out that you could put a lot of information on and compare for water usage as well. But right now it's just for energy. That would have been an expansion to it. Another one we're looking at is a Smart Home Energy and Water Saving Rebate Program. We're planning to implement AMI in order for residents to take advantage of that system as far as for saving energy. We'll need to provide them with in-home devices and smart or programmable communicating thermostats, they're called. So they're in-home devices to help them save. So we're looking at adding new rebates for those for our customers. Another program will be to switch out the old refrigerators in the schools, in the city facilities. It's a particular problem in the city schools. They have a lot of personal appliances. They use a lot of energy. And the reason why a lot of teachers have these in the classrooms is the common area refrigerators are really old, and they won't use them. They want to have their own. So we're going to work with the school district to provide Energy Star refrigerators and take out the old appliances, and we'll do that with the city offices as well. And the other program is, actually I skipped the one it's the Green Allowance Program. We're going to work with a company to develop a program that targets kids at an early age to get them involved in energy education and how to save energy. It'll be a kids-based website and educational materials. And the motivation will be that the kids will make a deal with their parents to get an allowance based on how much energy they can save in the house. And it'll be a unique program, a new program that nobody else has right now. We're trying to find new ways to get the word out and get it out earlier with kids, and so that's something we're looking for. And the last one is the Green Glendale plan. One of the things with the Energy Efficiency Block Grant Program, you have to have a sustainable plan for the city. And we have our energy efficiency goals, we have our RPS, we have a number of things, but they're not combined in one plan. So we're going to work with other city departments to put that plan together, and it's part of what you need for submitting for these grants anyway. So that's the presentation.
Mr. Kenny, do we know what percentage of the city, of the annual usage of electrical powers from the city? Do we know that number? I mean, I think it's great that we're changing out the refrigerators and assisting the schools.
In
and
total
other things,
for the whole city?
Yeah. I mean, what percentage of electricity used through GWP is city or public agency related?
I know the numbers, I just don't know how big they are.
Okay.
They're like, think it's like I remember like 1170 gigawatt hours. That's like a big number. So it's a small amount. I think it's like 16 million kilowatt hours is the city usage.
So going back to trying to make it user-friendly for the public.
Yeah, I mean, they're big
In the future,
numbers.
can we
I
find
mean,
out? I'm just
I'd have
curious.
to go and find them, and then I'd have to look up how many zeros and how many make a gigawatt hour and a mega. It's complicated, yes.
It's not that important. I just thought if we knew. Okay, thanks.
We'll find out for next meeting.
Thanks.
Unless Ramon or somebody knows.
Put him on the spot. Where is he?
He's hiding. So okay, he doesn't.
Thanks.
Now, most of these programs you mentioned are new programs, or they were in the works already?
Some of them are like an expansion of a program. We have a program right now that targets our large business customers. We budget $300,000 a year. We're talking about adding $200,000 a year and having that a campaign to get people to do energy audits. We've got a contract, or we put an RFP out through SCAPA, Southern California Public Power Authority, and have lined up about 5 companies who will do energy audits for our customers at 6.5 cents a square foot, which is a lot cheaper than the 10 cents we had been paying. So then we're going to have a campaign, and you get your audit done at 6.5 cents, and then typically what they'll do, they'll get the audit, they'll look at, and then they'll start over the next 2, 3, 4 years, they'll start implementing what's in there. They don't normally do it all at once, but they'll do, if lighting is usually the first thing they do, and then they'll do the more expensive things.
And GWP is going to take the lead on the energy efficiency block grant?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation. With regard to the refrigerator, I know we currently have at least one program
Yes.
with the refrigerator. Can you remind our customers what they are right now?
The low income?
Yes.
Yes.
I know there's one.
That's our Cool Care program. For a small fee of $100, you get your old refrigerator replaced with a brand new Energy Star model. So in that $100 is payable on your bill for over 2 years.
Okay. Is there another one?
We have a rebate program also
Okay.
for Energy Star refrigerators for general residential customers.
So it seems like we're trying to expand that with this program here, free refrigerators to the local schools and city government, correct?
Yes, it's just a one-time targeted program.
Right. And so I was just wondering, have we considered eliminating that $100 fee for low-income families?
We could propose that. I mean, that's not a problem from our perspective. I would.
It seems to me it's a program that we really want to encourage, and if they're low-income family, that are on our low-income rate, and in these bad economic times, I think it would be a good idea to try to consider to eliminate the $100 fee.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel about that.
It's definitely something we should look into, I guess. Or
We'll look into it and determine what the cost of that would be.
Okay, thank you.
That's the key thing I would comment on. There's going to be some economic ramifications, and we should look into what that would be before we go ahead with that.
Because I am aware of other utilities doing it without collecting the fee.
Let's see, I had questions if you're done.
Yes, sir.
It seemed that all the programs you mentioned were of the operation and maintenance type, not really anything capital, into which the funds from the incentive package are coming. Is that correct? Are the incentive package funds available for capital programs? I guess is the question I'm asking.
These funds are specifically for. If you look in your report, there's there's 14 items here that you could use the money for, and actually number 14 is any other appropriate activity.
Craig, you might want to mention our efforts for trying to obtain stimulus funding for AMI, because I think that's the biggest single. Yeah,
I should have.
That would go along.
Okay.
That's not in this report.
Right.
That's another set of money. There's $3.6 billion for implementation projects for smart grid. We're working separately and with SCAPA to put together a grant application on that.
Okay.
Whatever will be to our most advantage we'll go with, but it'll probably be the SCAPA submission with LA and Burbank and a few other utilities. We're going to combine all our applications together. We have the support of the CEC and other public officials in Sacramento to apply to the federal government on that. I believe that application is due the end of July. This one is due this month, end of this month.
Okay, another question I had is, do we have an idea as to how much of the incentive package money Glendale might have qualified for as opposed to how much it's actually getting, or is that?
Well, the way that the Energy Efficiency Block Grant Program was, if you were a city over 35,000,
Yeah.
it was a formula-based, you get this much. Doesn't mean that there won't be other opportunities, competitive opportunities. Generally, the way this works, they say, everybody, this is how much you get. A lot of people don't apply for it, and then they got to, you have to be ready to apply later on to get that money, more, maybe on a competitive basis. That's happened with us before.
And if I understand you correctly, all the money that we qualified for under the formula has been allocated through these programs?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Next item.
Report number 2, Water Survey, RKS presentation.
Actually, before we start that, I would take the next request to speak from the public from Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you. Just a quick clarification from Mr. Keenan. There you are. Okay. You were talking about these being the block grant and public benefit charge, public benefit programs. Are the school program and the city building upgrades only the block grant, or are they also coming partly out of public benefit charge funds?
The way this was distributed, I believe the public benefit was paying for the city, or the city is split between Energy Efficiency Block Grant and PBC. The refrigerator program is just PBC.
So my question then is, the public benefit charge, or public benefit programs that I thought we had were all public benefits for the public rather than government.
Oh.
So I'm wondering if it's appropriate using PBC funds for the city, for city
Yes.
properties.
They are our customer. They pay into
Okay,
the
so-
PBC fund just like anybody else.
Gotcha.
And actually, helping the city reduce its bills helps everybody in the city, because
Right.
that's money to do other
And
things.
I wasn't thinking, of course, they are not GWP, therefore they're everything other than yourself.
We don't use it for GWP.
Right.
We use it for the
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, excuse me, my name is David Reichman. I'm CEO of RKS Research and Consulting, a survey research firm, and we do surveys for utilities all over the country. And I'm here today to tell you about a survey that we did among GWP residential customers on their water service. Goal of the project was very straightforward. It was to obtain readings of residential customer satisfaction with GWP as a provider of water service. Okay, here we are. Okay, I got it. Sorry. I'm sorry. The objectives were to obtain, other objectives were to obtain measures of GWP's reputation in being easy to do business with, awareness of GWP advertising and communications, effectiveness of communications, GWP's image, water quality, awareness of the current water supply situation, participation in water conservation programs, assessment of the price of GWP's price for water, and of the GWP bill. How did we do it? There are really two separate surveys that we're going to be comparing. The first one was a statewide survey of residential customers that was sponsored by the California Municipal Utilities Association. This was the third time that we did this survey. It consisted of 503 telephone interviews among a cross-section of residential customers statewide, roughly 300 in Southern California, 200 in Northern California, and altogether this represented about 112 separate California utilities. The survey was conducted in January, and it averaged about 15 or 16 minutes in length. The GWP survey, this is the first time we've done this for you, so it's really it's really a benchmark survey, consisted of 100 telephone interviews, and we were given a customer list as the basis for the sampling of that. GWP was identified as the sponsor. The questionnaire was identical with the CMUA statewide survey, and the GWP survey was done between April 28th and May 5th, so the results that I'm about to present are less than a month old. You should note that the GWP survey, although we asked about water service, and water quality, and things like that, these customers have a relationship with you, so they're really talking about the entire relationship, even though the question's really zeroed in on water. First question in the survey was, what is their overall satisfaction with their water utility? The cylinder on the left shows that 73% of GWP customers say they're very satisfied with GWP in providing water service, and that is about the same as the 70% statewide who said that they were satisfied with their utility. We also asked the question to rate their utility on being easy to do business with, and this really does show a major strong point for GWP. 81% of your residential customers say that it rates you excellent on being easy to do business with, and that's much, much higher than the two-thirds of California municipal utility customers statewide who say that their utility is easy to do business with. And as a matter of fact, that's a statistically significant finding, which on a sample size of 100 interviews, it takes something to be statistically significant, but that little squiggle up there means that it is a statistically significant finding. This is a big differentiator as far as your customers are concerned. We found that 32% of your customers say they had one or more contacts with you in the past year, and that compares with a little bit higher statewide, about 38%. Two-thirds of your customers had no telephone contact with you in the past year, and it's about 62% statewide. We asked about, have they seen, heard, or read any advertising by their water utility in the past year, and this is a major, major strong suit for Glendale Water and Power. 65% of your residential customers, that's two-thirds, say that they have seen such advertising and communications, and that's more than twice as many for the average water utility statewide. That's a major accomplishment. When we ask the customers who say they do recall seeing, hearing, or reading advertising, what do they recall? 57% say they recall a water conservation message, very specifically. We've done this survey for others in other oversamples, and I can't tell you who they are, but in most other cases, the number one thing that comes up, the number one subject, is energy conservation. In your case, it's water conservation.
But could that be due to the switch and recent push lately to conserve water, and that's more of an emphasis that we have going on with GWP?
No, because I think that statewide there's an emphasis on conserving water, but what the customers are relating to here is what do they recall in the communications. And the communications that other customers and other utilities are hearing is about energy conservation and saving energy and so forth, and that's getting buried. So the water conservation message in many of the other utilities is getting buried. Here, it really is overwhelming the energy conservation message. So it is different here than it is elsewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Elsewhere meaning outside of California?
No, other California utilities.
Can you go back to that graph? So if that's the case, shouldn't the light blue bar for energy conservation higher than 9%?
So I'm sorry. I'm glad you asked the question up. What I'm saying is other oversamples where we did additional interviews for other cities where we actually looked at their customers compared to statewide. Some of your neighbors, as a matter of fact, but it's not fair for me to reveal their information here. But when we ask the same question, what we get is, yes, I recall the advertising, but I recall an energy conservation message. Here, they're saying, no, I recall a water conservation message. So that's when I said elsewhere, I meant other cities where we've done oversamples.
Okay.
The bill insert or the newsletter that accompanies that's often sent out with the bill. This is a very unbelievable chart because people don't believe that customers read these things. And every survey that we ever do says this is one of the major effective communicators that utilities have. And what this says is when we ask customers, how often do you read these newsletters or bill inserts, 30% of your customers say they read them thoroughly every time, which is twice as many as the number of statewide water utility customers responding that way. Another 17% of your customers say they read it frequently. So what you have is nearly half of your customers, that's 47% if you add those two together, say they read it thoroughly or frequently. 25% read it occasionally, 12% hardly ever, 16% not at all. So the fact is that this is a good communicator, and apparently, as you see from the results that we have presented and that we will be presenting, it is getting the message out. We looked at how your customers see you on 5 image dimensions, keeping the water supply safe from terror. These are means. These are averages. 8.8 for Glendale Water and Power versus 8.3. That's a 0.5 of a point difference. Communicating effectively with customers. There it is again. The strength in communications, 8.6 to 8.1. Concern for the environment, 8.5 versus 7.8. Honesty in dealing with customers, 8.4 to 8.2. And management's performance in running the utility, 8.3 to 7.9. Generally, any score that's in the 8s is a very good score. And what's also important, although there are only 2 of these that are statistically significant, in every single one of these you're either at or above the statewide average, and that's the important pattern to see. How much trust do these customers have in their water utility? Well, 75% of Glendale Water and Power customers say they have a great deal of trust, and that's a little bit higher than the 2/3 statewide that say they have a great deal of trust. This is important because this is the bedrock of credibility. Water qualities. Now, this is a question we ask, how do you assess the safety for drinking, taste, smell, clarity, and absence of mineral impurities? This is customers' perception. And what this shows is it's exactly the same as the average utility, 7.9 versus 7.8, 7.5 to 7.4, exactly the same. So in terms of the qualities of the product, they're perceived as being exactly the same as the statewide.
None of these differences are statistically significant.
The only if you see the little squiggle, then that's statistically significant. But in terms of other image characteristics, providing a reliable and adequate supply, 8.6 to 8.3, it's not statistically significant, but it is above. Encouraging customers to conserve, 8.6 for GWP versus 8.2 statewide. Making water clean and safe, it's a 0.4 of a point difference. Providing an adequate water pressure, it's about the same. Balancing the needs of residential and business customers, your scores are about the same as the statewide scores. Finding new water supplies, is 7.8 to 7.6, it's about the same. And making use of recycled water, 7.8 to 7.4. So in terms, if you look at the totality of this, your customers are giving you a good scores for the job that you're doing on these dimensions. We asked customers to describe the drinking water supply situation today. 19% of your customers call it a severe drought, and 45% a mild drought, for a total of 64% saying there is a drought today. And that's significant. That's higher. It's almost 2/3 of your customers. That's about half of customers statewide that believe there is a drought. So in terms of getting the message out about the supply situation, your customers are much more in sync with this than customers statewide. However, when we ask your customers what is their response, have they taken part in utility water conservation efforts and water conservation programs, your customers and customers statewide only 20 or 21%. No more of even though your customers are more likely to acknowledge a drought, they are no more likely to participate in GWP's water conservation programs. That's what that says. When you ask the customers to describe their own efforts at reducing the amount of water that they use in their home, 59% of your customers say they're doing everything they can. Statewide, that's 50%. But even if you take that at face value, it still means that a huge number, 41% of your residential customers could be doing more to reduce water use, and statewide, that's 50%. So there's a lot of opportunity out there to get more people to reduce their use. We ask your customers to assess water utility in providing information. 8.0 versus 7.5 give you high marks in providing information on ways to reduce water use. And in terms of actually offering programs, the numbers are a little bit lower. You're still higher than the statewide, but this number, the 7.4, is lower than providing the information. So you're getting higher marks on information than in actually offering programs. That's what that says. We ask a little bit about the bill. What services are included in their bill? Well, some of your customers think you're providing natural gas, but most know that water or sewer services, stormwater, electricity, and trash collection. So what this shows is that your bill is multifaceted here in Glendale to a far greater extent than it is statewide, which is the truth, which is the fact. How do your customers like to pay their bills? How do they prefer? Well, mail, 48% of your customers and 52% statewide prefer mail, but a quarter of your customers say they like to do it online through the internet, and another 15% talk about automatic deduction from the checking account. So what this says is there's a great potential among your residential customers to pay in a variety of ways, much of it through computers and paperless and so forth. Customers, this is a very interesting chart. We ask customers, if 0 means that the price is low and 10 means the price is high, how would you assess the price you pay for water service? 36% of your customers, 36% statewide, say the price of water is high. That's what this says. Exactly the same. In terms of sewers, 27 and 32. And in terms of electricity, 42% of your customers and 43% who buy electricity from the same utilities providing water call the price high. My conclusion is that your customers do not see Glendale Water and Power as being a high-price utility. That's what no more so than any other utility throughout the state. Conclusions. Customer satisfaction, GWP customer satisfaction is very respectable. It's seen as being easy to do business with. That's a major differentiator. Performance is outstanding on advertising and communications, above the statewide averages, just significantly above the statewide average. GWP outperforms the statewide average on virtually all of the image dimensions. Customers have a high level of trust in GWP. Customers are more in tune with the water supply situation here than they are statewide. Customers, but they are no more likely to participate in utility water conservation programs than statewide. And rate criticism in this survey is muted. But there is room for improvement on perceptions of value. The bottom line from our standpoint, and we do a lot of surveys for a lot of utilities and for GWP in the past, this is a very good report card for GWP. In terms of the recommendations that we suggested to Glenn and his team, we think that Glenn should get the word out to GWP employees because they're the one who's making it happen. GWP is viewed in this survey as performing very well in a very challenging business environment. We also think that GWP should use its impressive communications capabilities to educate customers about the severe nature, severe is probably not the correct word right now, but the nature of the water supply situation, and attract customers to participate in GWP water conservation programs. That's a low number. Also communicate a value message that GWP does provide value to its customers. And also, it's always good to reinforce the positive image that the GWP is easy to do business with. It does have concern for the environment, and that it's a credible, trustworthy organization. Customers have high trust. And also that, as of this survey, GWP is not viewed as being a high-price utility. And that's our report card that was generated less than a month ago. So these are very current results. Questions?
comments?
It was Mr. Reichman, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your presentation. It's very informative, actually, on what the current perception of GWP is. Have you performed, or is there in the works to perform the same type of analysis with regard to the electrical side of GWP?
There'll be another survey done, I think.
It's actually being done within the, well, we do a residential survey. That was done last year. There's a survey among business customers that's going to be done this summer or in the next month or so. An electric survey, but the audience is business customers.
Thank you. Questions?
Yes, I had a quick question. The California cities that you mentioned, are they comparable in size or not necessarily to?
Some are bigger, some are smaller. I mean, it's really whoever decides to do an oversample. I think a couple of them are neighbors, some of them are further afield. So some are bigger, some are smaller.
Okay, thank you.
But they are different. In other words, the California statewide was the statewide column was a cross-section of the entire state. The people who decide to do oversamples, the cities that decide to do oversamples, that's a separate measure. Was that clear?
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
I want to thank you for the presentation. It's very informative, and it's not. I'm not surprised at all with the results. As a customer of Glendale Water and Power, I've always been very impressed with the communication, with the programs, and the efforts, in all different areas. I do have a question. How does this compare to the annual J.D. Power survey?
J.D. Power is electric. It's not water. It's really just electric.
They don't do water?
No. We do a 10. We do a 10 city, the 10 largest U.S. cities where we ask about water service, and that's going on right now. The last time we did it was 2 years ago, and I think these results are better than the 10 city average. But these are the 10 largest cities. They're in no way comparable to Glendale.
Okay.
I mean, it's the 10 largest U.S. cities, and we haven't finished that yet.
Okay, thanks. And one last thing, I want to congratulate Glenn and the whole Glendale staff for a job well done.
Thank you. Yes.
A couple of other questions here. You mentioned that the survey was based on interviews over the phone with 100 different customers.
Mm-hmm.
How did you ensure that the list was randomly selected?
GWP, well, among your customer base, GWP picks a random selection, and then we randomize it. They will give us 5,000 names to do 100 interviews, and we will randomize that list. So we just don't take the first name first and the last name last. We randomize it.
Okay. And then a question maybe more directed toward Director Steiger. How often do we do these surveys, or is this unique?
Well, this particular one, this is the first time we've done an oversample on the water survey. But we do annual surveys generally with the RKS statewide, and occasionally, depending upon the situation, we'll do oversamples on the electric or the business side, depending upon if there's a specific issue we want to sample.
Okay. When we worked on our strategic plan, did we take into account the results from surveys earlier?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's a very important point to make, and I trust we will continue to do so.
Yes.
And I also wanted to thank you for your presentation, congratulate the staff and management on a job well done. I do want to comment that the danger of success is that it breeds complacency, and I hope that we won't let our performance so far make us complacent in terms of trying to comply with these difficult goals we have. So I want to encourage everybody to use the success we've had with this survey to get the energy to get the rest of these goals done. So thank you very much.
Mr. Reichman, one more question on the 10 city survey. Is that public information that's published, or is it?
The 10 cities that purchased it, that bought into it, get it. It's not public information. It's like J.D. Power. You have to buy into
Subscribe to it.
But these are big. These are much larger cities. I'm not sure that when we generate the results, I will share one or two of them with Glenn and say, do you want this? I mean, I'm not sure you need it, but if you want it, it's not.
I just didn't know if it was readily available, if it's published, or if it's just for those 10 cities, or what the purpose of doing it is.
Occasionally, for example, I mean, Anaheim and Albuquerque, the first time we did it 2 years ago, they bought into it because they wanted to compare themselves against the 10 largest cities. I remember Anaheim, Albuquerque, there was one other that I can't remember. So it became a benchmark for them. But I think for Glendale, it's such a huge difference. It's probably not worth it.
And I'm not making that recommendation. I just, for my own sake, I'm curious what they were and what the results were. So thank you.
I have one more note to make. So overall, this is a great report card. Back to the customers' response to water conservation programs offered by the water utility, and what percentage have taken part and what percentage has not. Even though the statewide percentage is 19%, Glendale Water and Power is 21%. I understand that. I feel that is a very low percentage, and we need to make more of an effort, in encouraging our customers to participate in our programs. So that's one request I have.
Agreed, and we are, as we speak, stepping up our efforts in that regard. Yes.
Thank you.
I think we have one more request to speak from the public from Mr. Milano on this item.
I'd like to speak, so I don't have any more time.
Thank you very much, Chairman Foley, members of the Commission. In the past, I've been familiar with several surveys that the city has sponsored before, and usually it's followed by a lot of accolades from the board or the commission or the council directly. And I hope you don't mind my challenging a couple of things or asking questions that I think need to be said. In one of the surveys that the city sponsored about 3-4 years ago, one of the ending questions towards this particular survey on some of the quality of life indicators in Glendale, it turned out that it showed the population to be 20% Armenian. So I challenged the city council as to how they were able to come up with that number, and did the actual results have sufficient validity? So here's my question is, how do we know that the level of validity with regard to this particular set of questionnaires? Because I think that if we were to add how many Armenian households, how many Hispanic households, how many Korean households were reached, will allow us to independently test to see if the if the sample was truly random. Second thing is, I want to know if if the selection of the customers was customer only, or just a combination of, the GWP customers in general. Because there's a significant difference. Because as you all know, 62% of the population lives in multifamily housing, which means that a very significant number of them do not get any type of relevance information with regard to the billing having to do with how much they pay. Second, another thing that I have issue with this survey is to look at the areas where the gap is. Apparently, 47% have not heard of the water conservation. I'm taking a look at the other side, and that is a hugely significant number when you figure that we have declared a crisis. Now, imagine in any other circumstance where you're basically going to declare, if we could, let's say, a pending earthquake, and only 47% of the population know about it. So what is the meaning of a crisis, and what is the effect that we have if only 47% are aware of it? And what is more, when you look at that only 6% are really truly aware of the drought, that's horrific in terms of not the survey, but what it tells us concerning our effectiveness in reaching the public with regard to the message. The other thing that I have as a problem is with regard to the comparisons with the state of California. One of you was gearing to the right approach. Should we be more selective with regard to the comparison samples in other cities, so that we're able to better gauge, both the level of education and the level of type of customers we have? I think that we have, a fairly significantly knowledgeable and educated public in the city of Glendale, vis-a-vis LA or Compton or many other cities. And I think that as a whole, we would expect some of these results to be more positive because of that. And so, if that is the case, then how effective are we if we do have a more educated, should we say, and aware public when we are basically giving this type of results? My point here is that there are significant issues that we can take based upon the results of this survey to allow us to dig a little bit further into it, so that before we give accolades to ourselves with regard to how well we did, to basically find out what the challenges are and how this survey should be done perhaps in the future to really test to see how well we are conveying the information concerning the drought and usage and so forth. Eventually, the test of this particular survey are the numbers that came in at the actual usage and conservation, that come out of the empirical data that you get afterwards. It is my suggestion that this commission go over those questions again for another round of evaluating whether these results and these comparisons merit the accolades that you just gave it. If it were in front of me, I would spend more than the time allotted me here. But it is my suggestion that you go over that, because at the end of the day, what it does give you are the objectives with regard to the strategic plan. If we have those results, and those results are accurate and truly reflective, then what are the communication goals that we have in order to improve those rates? And the other relevant question is, should we continue to be comparing Glendale to the rest of the state of California, or should we set our own set of criteria, that is definitive, with regard to what this city should be doing, irrespective of what the state of California is doing? So if only 47% are aware of the issues with regard to the drought, should we set up our own goals and say, it should be at the minimum 90%, and then we should test continually, every so often, on that particular
analysis that we need, but I will start one more time with regard to that we need a way of getting this validity with some other independent questions to when it comes back. So we already know the answer. We know we should be getting this percentage, and if we're not, then it's very indicative. So that's the issue, and the other one with regard to were they customers of water only or electric and water included in the survey. Thank you very much.
We have another request to speak from Mr. Kazazian.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I wasn't going to speak on this matter, but after I listened to this presentation, I do have a difficulty on it to believe some of the survey results. We conducted a survey results close to about almost 500 Glendale residents and customers on a usage of the utility rate itself. We have over 1,000 petitions signed declaring that the rates are too high in Glendale. So the 100 it was contacted, something is not accurate on that. I would like to see that survey redone. I can, if you want, I can even with one email, I can send out 1,000 invitations over here for meeting and have all those 1,000 people that signed the petitions, most of them attend to this hearing. Do you know that as electric usage, we have one of the highest in the state of California? Water, we're not the highest, but we're almost there again. So a lot of people are complaining. We have residents complaining, single-family home complaining, apartment tenants are complaining, and there's only so much limit they could absorb this higher rates. So we have to find ways to reduce it down. So that survey is something wrong. I like to see the more of the results. Who was contacted? If we can get that data, I would very much appreciate the people that were contacted and what were the exact questions asked at what time of day. If we can get that, I would like to get a copy of it to go into it further. Thank you.
Comments or responses?
I'd like to, yes. A couple of things here. First, I would like to remind Mr. Milano brought up a point, and it's been brought up in the past, and that has to do with when we talk to water customers only, that there's a perception that the rest, that those that are in apartments never hear from us, which is not correct, because those in apartments also get electric bills for the most part. So we have about 85,000 bills per month that go out to our customers. And even if they're in an apartment and receiving water from a centralized location, they're still getting a GWP bill with a GWP communication, along with our normal The Source newsletter. So our customer base is communicated with, and I think that's what we saw here. So it's not just those that are individually water metered that hear from us. And secondly, I also want to correct something, because I saw Peter grimace when I heard the comment. No question, our electric rates are among the highest in the state. That is absolutely not true on the water side. So I don't want to mislead the public. Our water rates are nowhere near the highest. They're average for this area, and we continue to be in that. So I don't want to make it seem like that water is a high rate. The comment was that we're going up there too. So, and then finally, I'd like to ask Mr. Reichman to come back, if he could, for a second, and just give the qualifications, just a little bit of background on your firm and yourself, just to bring some validity to your survey.
Thank you. We've been conducting surveys for 35 years, and we've been working in California, working for the municipal utilities in California since 1995. And you might say, what's a New York-based firm doing working for California municipal utilities? Well, I mean, stranger things have happened, I suppose. But in California, we do a lot of work on electricity and energy efficiency and water. And as a result of the work that we've started here, we're doing a lot of these surveys around the country for other utilities, investor-owned utilities, water utilities. I have no personal stake in whether the results come out good or bad. As a matter of fact, I think a bad report, if management can get over it, is more challenging because it tells you some things to do. Where you have a good report card, where you're actually above statewide norms, then it's more the natural tendency is to kind of sit back and pat yourselves on the back and say we don't have to do anything. So it is more challenging. And as far as the statewide norms are concerned, yes, there are big cities in California, there are small cities, there are municipal utilities, there are investor-owned utilities, but California is unique in terms of it's bigger than any place else. It's got bigger problems. It's got bigger opportunities. I mean, we in the East look at you fondly and say, "There, but with the grace of God." No, we don't say that. But the fact is that you do some things very well. I mean, the whole municipal utility system here is very, very good. I mean, it really acts as a brake on the investor-owned utilities. And in the water situation, you're facing a problem here that is really unique, and some utilities are doing a better job than others. I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but I do want to stress, I don't really care how the results come out, and we're not paid to provide good results. I mean, we're paid to provide results that management can use to make decisions and make things better.
And as part of your survey process, you were just provided random number or names from GWP
Yes.
lists, and then through that list, you pick other people. You don't contact them to pre-screen them or discuss
Yes,
ahead of time.
we screen them that they've actually are our customers. And the fact of the matter is, the results from this survey that was done just a month ago, within the last month, match up quite well to a survey we did last summer. In some cases, the results were a little bit higher, they're a little bit lower, but they're not like this and this. They're close. So all of we look at results to make sure, do they make sense? I mean, if are the customers responding to the questions the way they're asked? We ask questions in a very neutral way because it doesn't pass to bias questions positively or negatively. That's not what we're paid to do.
So you were given a list of all our customers, 80-some thousand?
5,000.
5,000? Oh, 5,000.
We
how did
get
we come up?
we get an extract from the list. We get a random extract, and then we randomize it.
And how did we come up with that 5,000?
It's just randomly picked.
Randomly picked, regardless of size, areas, zip codes, anything?
Presumably, if it's a random list and we randomly select, it should be representative of your entire customer base. And every time we do a survey, for example, 3/4 of your customers said they were very satisfied with GWP. Last year, that number was 71%. I mean, it's in the same ballpark. It wasn't 10%, and it wasn't 100%. It was 10. It was 3 or 4 or 5 points difference.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes, with respect to the issue on electric rates, I just wanted to point out that we do have goals, goals to reduce the electric rates by certain levels within specified periods of time, and those goals are going to continue regardless of what the surveys say. I presume the goals are based actually on surveys that were conducted earlier.
The goals, well, of course, it was part of the strategic planning process, but recognizing the fact that GWP is among the highest on the electric side
Yes.
to rates, we are focused on that. Absolutely focused. That's probably our highest priority goal right now, is to reduce that.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. See the next item?
Item 3C, Glenn Steiger, General Manager, Report Number 1, Annual CIP and Budget Report.
Good afternoon. I'd like to provide an overview of the GWP budget, the current budget, and our proposed budget for the 09-10 fiscal year. This particular presentation that you'll see was given to the Glendale City Council in a workshop on May 20th, so this is exactly what our City Council has seen, and I wanted to present it to you today for comment, and so you have a pretty good idea of where we're heading. And the first thing I do want to mention is that this proposed budget is 100% consistent with and supports the GWP 5-year strategic plan that's been presented to you in the past, and is balanced and is a challenge, and will continue to be a challenge given the economic conditions that we see, but it is balanced, and we believe it's very achievable. Just to review our mission statement: to deliver reliable, high-quality, environmentally sensitive, and sustainable water and power services to our customers in a caring and cost-competitive manner while creating a stimulating and rewarding work experience for our employees. Our core services, essentially, are to provide electricity, potable and recycled water to approximately 84,000 electric and 33,000 water customers, respectively. We are set up in this organization, and the way right now we have 4 distinct areas and that are fully staffed, each led by an assistant general manager of electric, water, supply, customer and support services, and we will be filling the position of assistant general manager of utility financial planning and risk management within the next couple of months. This particular position is critical because it includes the risk management function, which is being ramped up as we speak and is very, very important to our trading activity, and of course is also responsible for overseeing all expenditures within GWP, along with the establishment of a full-time rate function, which we don't currently have. And as we move forward with a number of our initiatives, that becomes more and more important. So this is our overall organization. Our initiatives for the coming year include the following. The most important and the largest single initiative that we will have over the next few years is the smart grid, and part of the smart grid, as you heard earlier, is the AMI, or the metering piece of smart grid initiation. This is approximately a $35 to $36 million expenditure. It will completely change how we do business as a utility, both on the electric and the water side. And we'll have further presentations for you in the next few months in great detail, so I won't go into that today. AB 32 compliance, which essentially is the greenhouse gas mitigation initiatives for GWP, will be a major initiative in the following year, in that it requires us to do a number of things to start to comply with the reduction of greenhouse gas. That includes a larger look at renewable energy, a much greater dependence on energy conservation. You heard some of that from Craig Keenan earlier. The smart grid is part of that. And then ultimately, there may very well be a cap-and-trade system for carbon credits and carbon emissions credits. We will complete the Chevy Chase Reservoir within the 09-10 year, and we'll be ahead of schedule. So that's a very, very gratifying completion, and I think some of you have had a chance to see it. And again, we'll be offering another tour tomorrow. Reduce electric rates. We just talked about that. We are focused on reducing electric rates according to the strategic plan. We are on track. We have a number of initiatives. It does not happen overnight. I wish it could, but we hope certainly within the next 2 to 3 years to see major improvements in that area, and certainly within the 5-year time frame of the strategic plan we expect to meet our goal. A focus on theft of service. We're going to talk more about that in future months, but we have identified the fact that within Glendale we are certain that there's probably a fairly substantial amount of theft of service, particularly on the electric side, for various reasons. So we are focusing on that. That will tighten our losses. We have extreme electric losses right now, and much of that, not much of that, but probably 30 to 40% of the losses we see on the electric side are most likely associated with theft of service. Plus, it will help our financial position. It will also help to reduce rates once we get a handle on that. We will start the reconstruction of our Glorietta substation next year. Well, this year, actually, but next fiscal year. Heard a little bit from Eric before about that. I just mentioned how we're going to create a finance, rate, and risk management function within the next couple of months. We are establishing new water wells within the coming year to help augment some of the purchased water that we get now from Met. And within the next 6 to 9 months, we will have decided on the next generation technology to be utilized at Grayson or elsewhere in the city. We generally think of Grayson as our only location for generation, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So we're doing a study that will probably take another 6 months to complete. So within the coming year, we will have a direction on where we're going to go with our next generation. To give you just a general idea of some of the actions we've taken over the last 6 to 12 months to reduce expenditures within GWP, this will be the second year of fewer full-time employees, yet with increasing responsibilities and growth. We have not increased the number of full-time employees. In fact, we've actually reduced. And yet, we continue to have increasing responsibilities. Some of them you just heard. The AMI project is a major undertaking for us, and we'll do that with the same number of employees. The greenhouse gas mitigation, it takes a significant effort. So we think this is a fairly substantial step in keeping costs capped. We've eliminated all discretionary overtime. That's a major expenditure between our water and electric divisions. That represents somewhere between $600,000 and $800,000 per year. So that's a significant reduction. We've eliminated 57% of our take-home vehicles, and we've reduced travel by approximately 45%. So these are some of the things we've done within the last 6 to 12 months. We will continue to look at additional ways to reduce expenditures as we move forward. This is the electric service budget, and I'll go through it very quickly to give you a sense of where we've been and where we expect to be. Now, if we go back to 07-08, which was a fairly good economic year, and that represents a fairly normal year for GWP prior to the recession that we're in now. You can see that we had revenues of about $128 million. And I'd like to draw your attention here to the wholesale revenues, because we'll come back to that in a minute. But if you recall, GWP separates revenues and expenditures through base rate, which essentially is operations and maintenance, debt service, and so on, and adjustable rate revenue. And essentially that pays for our energy costs, the purchase power, our fuels, natural gas, coal, and so on. So those are the two sources. Those are three actual sources of revenue: base rate, adjustable, and wholesale revenues. And wholesale revenue is revenue that we attain through off-system sales, through selling outside of the city of Glendale. So this was our last more or less normal year. If you come to the 08-09 projected budget, as it stands right now, you can see that we've had a drop in revenue, and there are a couple of reasons for that. The obvious reason is the recession that we've had, but the one that we may tend to forget is if we go back to last summer, we had a significant spike in energy costs, which created a reduction in usage, and that's a fairly typical phenomenon. As the price of energy goes up, people tend to use less, and then as the price comes down, they kind of forget about it and use more again, and that's what we're seeing. We're already seeing that. So this reduction for the current budget year is a function of those two things primarily, and yet because of the spike, we still will have increased adjustable revenue over the previous year. And because we were readjusting how we do our off-system sales, the revenue that we'll bring in this year will be less than it was. So essentially, we had a very unusual year this past year. However, moving forward, we think we have a pretty good handle on where we're going to be going in the coming year. And our budget for this coming year is pretty much what we had budgeted last year before we had the volatility in the energy market and then the recession. And we believe this is a very good estimate of what we expect to see in base rate, $124 million, adjustable at $94 million, and finally we're getting back on track with our off-system sales, and particularly the fact that we're going to now have a full-time risk management function, which is essential if you're going to ramp up what you're doing on the trading side of the business. So now we expect to have about $5 million in wholesale revenue here. So if we follow this all the way down through expenses and so on, we end up with a net revenue of about $2.5 million, which is about right for the conditions that we're in now. We are proposing, and we've proposed this to City Council, to keep the transfer flat. The significance of that is the transfer traditionally is a percentage of revenue. What we're proposing is to cap it at the level, at the 08-09 level on the electric side of $19,100,000, and just keep it flat for the foreseeable future. Then we have a capital program, which includes Gloria Substation, AMI, a number of other things that you saw earlier, of $55 million. We end up with a total cash balance, which is really the reserves for GWP Electric, of about $105 million. So that's where we are in our proposal for next year. It's balanced. It relies on the economy pretty much staying flat as it is now, where we have no expectation of any kind of major recovery in this time frame. So I think it's a very realistic approach. There's no rate increase associated in any of this other than whatever adjustments we have to make in the adjustment here. And keep in mind, if the cost of energy goes down, this will go down. If the cost of energy goes up, this will go up. And this nets out with this, as you can see, our expenses adjustable. It's pretty much the same as our revenues, and so that's a function of the marketplace. So that's our electric budget. On the water side, it's a little bit different. The water side, we've had a series of rate increases that have been approved by City Council, were brought to you last year, and continue on, and primarily are focused on, again, the base rate. So you can see that the base rate includes a rate increase, so it steps up over where it is today. Also, we have the same type of structure on the water side, in that we have an adjustable piece along with the base rate piece. The difference in the water budget, which we need to deal with shortly, is twofold. And it comes down to, and I'm going to point this out right here, as you notice, if you come down to net income for the following year, we're at a negative $3 million. Obviously, we don't want to be in the negative position, and there's a reason for that. We are currently implementing the construction of the chromium-6 treatment facilities that you're all aware of, and we had a commitment from the state of California for $2.5 million worth of funding for that. Earlier this year, that funding was rescinded, and yet we still have a commitment to build the facility. So currently, we are funding out of our reserves. We will be funding that particular project out of our reserves, but it creates a $2.5 million deficit here. The additional deficit on top of $2.5 million is associated with the fact that we will be calling for water restrictions, again, as you're aware, probably in the next month or so, which in theory will create a 10% reduction in usage of water during the 09-10 year. However, by doing that, it also reduces the amount of base rate revenue by roughly 10%, obviously. Our proposal that we'll come back to both you and City Council with will address a methodology to make up for that loss. However, right now, we have nothing approved to give us the way to adjust for that, so therefore that's shown as a net loss here. So we expect that by the end of this year, this net loss will no longer be applicable. We expect to have the $2.5 million restored, and we expect to have an adjustment in rates associated with the water restriction or the water conservation ordinance, and that will bring this number into the positive. But for the moment, for the time being, we show it as a negative. Again, if we come down to the transfer, we are proposing that the water transfer remain constant, not be a percentage of revenue. We have roughly a $30 million capital program on the water side for this coming year. Part of that pays the final installment, so to speak, on the Chevy Chase water reservoir. And we end up with a year-end balance of about $27 million in reserves. So we're in pretty good shape on the water side, other than this negative. And as I said, that's somewhat of an anomaly, and we will adjust for that. To give you a quick summary of the next 5 years on our CIP, this will give you a general idea of where the dollars are being proposed to be spent over the next 5 years. Power management has a pretty significant expenditure in that time frame, and that's associated with doing something, as I mentioned earlier, with upgrading our current generation facilities, either by retiring some of the facilities we have at Grayson, building a new plant, doing something different technologically. But in any case, we know there's a fairly significant expenditure, and if you notice, it starts to ramp up over the next 3 years. So that's where most of the dollars will be going over the next few years on power management. That'll be focused primarily on Grayson or on something to replace Grayson. On the electric services side, you heard earlier the presentation by Eric, and the dollars here are associated with the projects that you saw earlier, the upgrades to our substations, the upgrades to our transmission and distribution system. So that's all included in there. You can see it's fairly consistent. It starts to ramp down in the out years. Water services, with the next couple of years, have some fairly high expenditures, primarily to pay the Chevy Chase Reservoir and the first phase of our AMI, or smart grid system. Because remember, water and electric are both associated with AMI. So there's an expenditure there. And then, of course, we start to ramp down over time. And then finally, we are at a necessity having to rebuild parts of our utility operations center, more affectionately known as the yard. That's where Grayson Station is. That's where all of our operations are housed. And there's a number of things that need to be done. This year, we will be initiating the construction of a new warehouse and a safety building. And then over time, we will start to rebuild some of the older buildings, remove the trailers. We have a number of employees in trailers down there. So that's a 5-year program also. But that, and you can see these dollars are associated with rebuilding and building new facilities at the yard that are desperately outmoded. And then finally, just to wrap it up, our future challenges, again, we talk about reducing electric rates, and we've benchmarked it at 35% below what we consider to be our major competition, and that's Southern California Edison. We believe we're on track for that. We've talked about increasing the efficiency of the Grayson power plant. One way or the other, we will do that. In order to stay competitive, we have to get our efficiency greatly improved. The AB 32 compliance initiatives are long-term and have a cost associated with them. So great challenges there. We talked about the smart grid. On water services, we need to expand our potable sources. We're doing that now and looking at new wells. We have a 5-year plan to expand our recycled water system greatly from where it is today. We need to sustain conservation. And by the way, this also affects electric, same issue. As I mentioned earlier, it's fairly common to conserve when the price of the commodity goes up. That's true in electric, and it's also true in water. But it's also just as common as the price stabilizes for the conservation efforts to stop. Our challenge will be to create sustainable conservation. We believe it's absolutely essential in moving forward. And then finally, asset management. We believe that we can get far, far more efficient if we manage our assets in a much different way than we do today. We'll start looking at that later this year in the water side and eventually expand it to the electric side. And happy to take some questions or comments. I know I ran through that fairly quickly, so.
I have a question. I noticed you referred to AB 32 compliance several times in here. I don't hear anything else other than that in the area of renewables, the RPS. I know the last time we reviewed it, we were in great shape. We were like about 18-19%.
We're higher than that now.
Higher than that now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because even though Glendale Water Power has not committed to achieving 20% by 2010, that is the number that all the utilities are trying to make next year. Because I understand the last time we reviewed it, our commitment was 2017. That
Yes.
was what went to the council.
We're at about 23% right now.
23?
Yeah.
Okay. And I was just, I would like to know, are we actively still trying to acquire more? Are we trying to go for the 33 or 35%?
We are on track for 33% or 35 if that's what it turns
In
out
10
to be.
years. Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you notice, Steve Linz is not here today, and the reason he's not here is because he's out negotiating some additional renewable
Okay.
projects. Yeah, we have a very a pretty complex strategy actually when it comes to renewables, because we're taking a look at how to diversify renewables over the long term and how to trade them and use them to our benefit so that we stay on track, and yet we do it in a measurable way. Because what happens is, what we don't want to do is either get too much too soon or not enough and then have to go very quickly at the end. So we're trying to ramp it up in a very, very consistent way. But we are focused on renewables, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Quick question for you. On the $2.5 million regarding the chromium-6 from the state of California, is that going to ever come back?
We expect it to come back. I can't say for sure, but our expectation is that it will be restored.
All right. And any timeline as to when that might occur or when we might hear?
We're hoping later this year.
And was there agreement to do it, to provide that money voluntary or through litigation or through some other?
No, that was a grant.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Miller?
Yes, when the last time we had the rate increase, there was discussion about rehabilitation of distribution mains, and I didn't see a discussion of that, although I assume it's subsumed in your capital improvement
yes.
program, and perhaps you could
yes.
talk a little bit about that. How much is what percentage of your capital improvement program is comprised of pipeline?
You're talking about water side?
Yeah, on the water side.
About 25 miles of pipe rehabilitation over the next 5 years. And what we did is we included all of that in detail in the strategic plan. So that shows up in the strategic plan. We did not include it in detail in this, but yes,
that's fine. It's a fairly small percentage, actually, of your overall water CIP expenditures.
Correct. Correct.
All right, thank you. I did want to ask also about the $2.5 million related to the chromium-6. If the state doesn't come through and return the money, what's the contingency plan, if any?
Comes out of our reserves.
Okay.
That's why we have reserves.
That's all. Thank you for the presentation.
Mr. Steiger, the CIP summary, is there a way to look at, we're looking forward for the next 5 years, is there a way to look at what we've spent during the last 5 years in different categories, just
Absolutely.
to have a comparison?
Would you like to see that?
Please.
We'll provide that, yes.
Thank you.
I also have a request to speak from the public from Mr. Kazazian.
I'll make it fast. Number one, on the water survey report, I only commented on 2 items. I didn't comment on anything else. I just want to make sure that as a customer-friendly, I have a very good rapport with them. I believe that survey is totally accurate for that matter. I just want to make sure there's no misunderstanding on that. They've been always courteous and polite in every way. Another thing is on the $2.5 million, I have 2 solutions to it. I believe there is some stimulus money maybe we can get. Maybe we should look into that. That's one thing. We do have it right in front of us, the project. We can apply to that. Or either way, if we don't get it, you can stop the transfer and the $4 million and get that out of it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila, next item.
Item 3D, Water Report Number 1, Update Water Conservation Ordinance. Report Number 2, Water Supply Report. And Report Number 3, Chevy Chase Update.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Peter Kavunas, Mr. General Manager. Peter Kavunas, Assistant General Manager, Water Services. On the items that we have, you have received a copy of the potable and recycled water production with your agenda. Did the Commission have any questions? There was nothing out of the ordinary that I want to draw your attention to.
If I recall correctly, your recycled water production went up quite a bit, or am I wrong about that?
You're correct. It's very cyclical. As we get as irrigation demands go up, recycled water goes up. We expect it to go up from about 75 acre-feet in April to about 150 in May, and probably maybe a little upward of that in June.
I don't recall seeing it last year, though, or is it comparable this year to what was going on?
Yes, absolutely. If you look on the back of the packet, there's a report. There's a chart that shows in graphical form the recycled water usage, and it shows 2008 is pretty much right on the money for April with 07 as well as 06.
Quite right. Thank you.
And shows the cycle. If there are no other questions, a brief update on Chevy Chase 968. Commissioner Miller joined us on the tour that we had last Thursday. Half of the reservoir is complete. We're expecting to start filling it with water to do a leak test next week. And this is the nail-biting time for us. You fill it with water after spending a few $1 million building it, and you hope the water stays inside. We expect that it will. We're very pleased with the contractor that's done the work. We've had top-notch construction management on the job. So. After that, the reservoir is placed in service, and it can have water pumped into it from below, and it can release water to the service area below by gravity feed. About mid-July, we expect to have the pump station operational as well, and the pump station will then allow us to take water from that half of the completed reservoir and move it further up the hill. So our reliability for the summer, our comfort level for the summer will go up dramatically. So one of our major objectives to be without storage for only one summer really has been met. So we're very pleased about that. The second half of the reservoir is being built at a very rapid pace. We expect that to be in place by August or mid-August or so, and then expect that we'll work on restoring the golf course and have it playable by January 1, 2010. That was our commitment, and we intend to keep it. After the tour that we had last Thursday, we had the last opportunity for the community to go inside the reservoir. This was our 4th community meeting, where we meet with neighbors that are interested. We give them an update on the progress, and then we take them by shuttle actually onto the construction site, and they have an opportunity to walk inside the reservoir. And this started when it was demolition at first, and then just a huge, giant pit, and then it was just slowly through the stages of the project being built. We had about 70 people come out at the last community meeting Thursday night. generally been received very well by the community. And so we're at a really good stage right now. Anybody that wants to visit the reservoir would see half of it completed, the other half being built, and it's kind of the right in-between point. Are there any questions by the Commission?
I did want to comment. I thought that the innovative design of dividing the reservoir in two parts is very helpful and worth highlighting to the audience, that you're able to not only put a section of the reservoir back in service early, at the beginning of the summer to provide fire flow, but in the future, as you need to do operation and maintenance, you can take one section out versus the other, and you can keep the reservoir in much better shape. So that was a good design concept. I was very impressed by what I saw, and thank you for the tour.
Thank you. One other feature, is since we're tooting our horn a little bit, is that in the summer we need both cells of the reservoir to meet demands. In the winter, we don't need both cells of the reservoir, so we can choose to take one or the other out of service, so we don't have to maintain as much volume of water and potable water quality. So, and one of the improvements of the new design is to have a division wall that goes all the way up, which allows us to take half the reservoir out of service but still maintain full pressure at the system below, which a capability we did not have before. So we're very pleased.
I think on the agenda there was also an update on the water conservation ordinance we haven't touched on.
Yes, the water conservation ordinance, we have, as you heard last time, we were embarking on a community outreach effort. We have conducted 2 community meetings. We have met with the Board of Realtors and the Chamber of Commerce, and we also met with large customers. We presented to them information about the existing water ordinance, existing water rates, and the water supply in the state. And we described for them the proposed changes to the ordinance. We received feedback. We have some modifications to the proposed ordinance changes based on that feedback, and we plan to come back to City Council with that on the June 26th meeting. We have the third and last community outreach meeting is this Wednesday night at Spar Heights.
And how well attended are those meetings?
Well, from our staff's point of view, we provide a lot of staff to answer questions. From a community's point of view, we've had the first meeting we had about 10 members of the community. The second meeting we had, I want to say maybe a few folks trickled in a little bit later, but we probably ticked up to 7 or 8 folks that came in. The Realtors and Chamber of Commerce meeting were well attended, maybe 15.
Oh, at least.
At least.
Yeah.
And the large customers we probably had in the 15 to 20, each representing one customer.
And tonight we will be speaking to the Homeowners Coordinating Council.
Is that the last public meeting, or is there one more?
Well, tonight's was sort of outside of our original plan. Tonight is an opportunity that came up out of a request from the Homeowners Council, and the general manager will cover that. Wednesday night is the last planned community.
And just to remind the public, where is that and what time?
Spar Heights at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
On Wednesday, June 3rd.
Thank you.
Do you have an address? You can cite an address for the sake of the audience.
Spar Heights Community Center.
Okay.
I go by autopilot. I don't have the address.
GPS.
The GPS. And, Christine, do you know this?
I don't, but I believe it's also posted on the city's website. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
How have we got word out about these meetings? How have we tried to alert the public to the meetings? Because the attendance really has been, not very many people from what you're saying.
Yeah. The meetings were noticed at the, of course, GTV6. They're also noticed with the newspaper postings at the Glendale News Press. Mr. Steiger, any?
Well, they've been, as I said, they've been in the news press numerous times. I don't know if we did mailings on that.
I don't believe we did mailings.
No bill inserts or anything yet?
No, because there wasn't enough time, actually.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
It's been fairly quick.
Given what the survey indicated. All right.
The address, by the way, is 1613 Glencoe Way.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question on the process, how you conduct the meeting. So a presentation's made, and the attendees raise their concerns, and GWP note their concerns.
Yes.
And then what happens?
Well, we try to answer any questions the public may have and note the concerns at the same time. So what we intend to do with that is go back in our session of preparing a revised ordinance and a council report to explain everything to council. Our intention is to take the comments that we've captured and bring those back to City Council with responses as to whether they were incorporated or not incorporated in our final proposal to City Council. One of the comments that we also intend to follow up on was some of the members of the business community wanted to have a copy of the proposed amendment. So we'll make sure that even though it's posted and they could get it off the internet, that we'll make a direct mailing to them so that they can see what we're proposing. But the idea is to take the community's input and incorporate it as much as possible.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Have you seen anything then that has led you to want to modify the ordinance? Has there been any input yet? Or is it premature to say?
It's a little premature, if you don't mind. There was one suggestion that was great, and we'll have to consider if we can incorporate it in terms of devices that become mandatory. There was a suggestion made that the hot water recirculating pump is a device that saves a lot of water, as people will draw water to wait for the hot water to kick in as it goes through the piping of the house. And a hot water recirculating pump, which can be set on a timer, recirculates hot water so it's already there at the time somebody starts. I don't know. We're going to look into whether we can make that a mandatory feature of new homes and recommend that. That was a suggestion that was made.
I think, though, probably one of the most significant changes that we're looking at right now and incorporating is an issue that we had discussed with the realtors. And the realtors had
Point of sale?
Yeah, they had voiced their concerns about that. We met with them. We had significant discussion, a lot of good interchange. They made a suggestion that we are pretty sure we're going to be able to work with that does change that. We'll bring that back.
We also have a request to speak from the public, from Mr. Kazazian again.
Once again, my name is Aram Kazazian. I have a couple of comments on that, by the way, and I know Glenn and Peter has heard about this. On the fines, if you use too much water 1 month, and I asked them if they've heard about the singular rollover plan, where I know they kind of laugh about it, but that's what it is. So if a homeowner or a property owner used too much water this month and they're going to be paying fines, you should be able to roll over that usage for the following month, or the following month should be assessed over a 12-month period, just like the singular funds does. So that way you don't get stuck paying the fine. If you have a fine of this month on your property of $10,000, say, that's what you're assessing the fines that we're looking about. So $10,000 fine, and so the following month you have to make all efforts to cut that down, so you can cut it down over the next 3 or 4 months and bring it to neutral fine. Okay, that's what I like to see. I know that they don't want to do it. I said I'll even come and reprogram a computer to do it. That's not a problem for me. I can do that. So that's a very simple thing. We only have 35,000 water usage customers versus millions of Singular has in their customers. So they can do the rollover plan. We can do it for 35,000. So if we don't do that, I figure that's extra taxation, and that's incorrect. We shouldn't do that as a city, as to the public, the damaging. That's one main thing. The other thing is, as you're aware of, I've been a very, very heavy requesting reclaimed water for 9 years now. I've gone to City Council. I've come over here. 9 years I worked to get reclaimed water into the hillsides where we could save a lot of water. So it's our fault. It's the city's fault. And I also told Glenn it's not his fault. He wasn't here for 9 years. But it's our fault that we did not pursue higher usage of reclaimed water. We could reduce our water usage by major amount of water if we would have had reclaimed water up in Chevy Chase Canyon area, into Chevy Oak Knolls area, Rancho San Rafael Homeowners Association area. These are very, very large users of fresh water for irrigation, and they cannot cut back. In fact, there was a few years ago when it was cut back, The fire department got after it because all the hills were dry. We had to turn the water back on again, and that also created a different problem where when we got the El Nino, because the water had cut back, vegetation had died, we had $100,000 damage into the hills, slides coming down. So you can't really cut back irrigation and kill all the plants and have the place look like a desert. That's not correct to do. So we need to get that reclaimed water back up again. Another thing is even the Grandview Cemetery. Why aren't we bringing reclaimed water up there, providing those people free water? Give them free water. You have the water you're dumping into the LA River, into the ocean. They can't afford to pay for it. Give them reclaimed water. So what? People deserve respect. Okay, that's another thing. I'll go back again to the rates of apartment condos. You know, the apartment condos, it came across this to me. I know everybody's very quiet about it now. Apartment buildings and condominium buildings with single meter usage, they pay double the water rate as any other homeowner pays. Double. Because what it is, I have a friend of mine has an 80-unit condo building. There's 1 meter on that 80 units. Only the first 1,000 cubic feet of water is rated at 73 cents. Anything above that is rated at $1.46 cubic foot. So they're paying twice the amount of water as a single-family home. So that's why people are getting hit hard on that. We're already paying double. Now we're going to go and assess some penalties on top of it, 400% in penalties. I went through this back in the 90s. Our fines were $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 every 2 months. It was huge amount fines. I remember when nobody could pay them. It was a problem. Then what are you going to do? You're going to assess those fines on the tenants. The tenant's already in trouble. People don't have money. And if they can't pay it, what are we going to do? Force them into eviction, evict them from their homes because they can't pay those fines? So we have to find a happy medium to help the people of Glendale. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. Another thing, the website, by the way, it's very poorly done. You cannot, those meetings, if you want to look at the agenda where those community meetings are, so hard to find. I mean, even for me to, because I wanted to send letters out to people in my area I wanted to get address. It was so hard to get to it. It takes you so many pages to get to it. It's not on the agenda matter. It's not on the community events. It should have been right in the front where you can get to that. So very poorly done. Circulating pump, I don't think any property should be without a circulating pump. I've put circulating pumps in for over 30, 40 years of my life. So that's a very good system. It doesn't use much power. You put in a timer. You put a very small pump you need to do. It only draws 1/10 of an amp, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Comments?
Does the Commission have any questions or comments they would like answered?
No. Thank you. Sheila, next items.
Old business.
Any?
Yes, I did have one item here. During the previous meeting a month ago, I think we had a comment from the public, Mr. Milano, regarding the timing of the meeting and whether it would be changed. And I think we were going to look and see if there was any evidence, whether there had been any concern expressed on the public about being able to attend the meetings.
None.
Yeah. And I do want to mention that if we do have the meetings later, I think that's going to create overtime, possibly, for the staff. So I think it's good we just leave the meetings as they are. That's all I have.
Next item.
New business.
Any new business to raise?
I had a question regarding we had the capital improvement program presented for electric, and it was about the distribution. Is there a plan to do it about power supply?
We can provide a power supply CIP.
Oh, okay. All right.
Absolutely.
That's probably an agenda forecast issue then.
Next
Jumped
item.
ahead.
Agenda forecast. Is that it?
Yes, I suppose we should put that on.
Okay.
Any others? Last item.
Adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next meeting will be July 6, 2009. Thank you.